Hello students, today I bring you this news capsule on the life and work and historical background of George Orwell. First of all, we have to say that George Orwell was born as Eric Hughes Blair in the year 1903 in Motihari, Bengal, India. He was the second of three children and the only boy born to Richard and Ida Blair. His elder sister, Marjorie, and his younger sister, Avril, completed this middle-class Anglo-Indian family. As was the custom with such middle-class children born abroad, he was sent back to England for his education. His mother, a rather left-wing woman and militant suffragette, accompanied him to England. Orwell attended the best English schools, including Eton College, a school that epitomized traditional British education. Poorer than the other students and feeling insecure about himself, he never quite fit in with the rest of his classmates. Politically, he had difficulty accepting the world of British imperialism that surrounded him. These feelings of, let's say, being an outsider, coupled with Orwell's firm belief, which he expressed early in his life to friends and family, that he felt fated to become a great writer, affected the course of his entire life. Influenced by his mother's revolutionary politics and charged by his own political ideas, Orwell ultimately turned to a writing career. However, when he graduated from Eton College in 1921, Orwell briefly followed the family tradition and entered civil service as a member of the Indian Imperial Police in Burma. He served in this position from 1922 to 1927, gathering material for his two most famous essays on shooting an elephant and a hanging. During these 5 years, he witnessed and participated in the British policies of colonialism. A socialist at heart, Orwell came to the conclusion that British imperialism was futile and destined to come to an end. Orwell returned to England to devote his time to writing and supporting himself in this period of fairly severe poverty, with a series of temporary jobs and journalistic writing assignments. An account of these difficult years was recorded in his first book, Down and Out in Paris and London, published in the year 1933. His novel Burmese Days, published in the year 1934, came from his Far East experiences. It was followed by A Clergyman's Daughter, 1935, and Keep the Aspidistra Flying, 1936, which expressed his negative attitudes toward British society. An assignment covering the lives of the miners of northern England enabled Orwell to share the experiences and hardships of these working-class people. Orwell married Aileen O'Shaughnessy in the summer of 1936. At the end of that year, he and his new wife left for Spain, where he joined a Trotskyist unit of the militia and fought in the Spanish Civil War. What he witnessed there shook his socialist ideals. He was appalled by the brutal tactics employed by the communists, who were armed by the Soviet Union and turned loose against Stalin's political enemies in Spain. Orwell was wounded in Spain and diagnosed with tuberculosis upon his return to England. An account of his Spanish experiences is the subject of Homage to Catalonia, 1938, an autobiographical work. During World War II, Orwell was kept out of active service because of his worsening health. He continued to contribute to the war effort through his writing and his broadcast to India over the BBC. When his wife died in 1943, during a minor operation, Orwell left London and went to the Hebrides Islands, with his adopted son. Actually, he went to the Inner Hebrides, to the so-called island, beautiful paradise island called Jura, from November 1943 to January 1944. He worked on Animal Farm, which he published in 1945. As the war was coming to an end, his tuberculosis grew worse, but his writing continued. He completed in 1984 a political novel which he began in 1948 and saw published in 1949, just 6 months before his death on January the 21st, 1950, at the age of 46. What about the historical background? Well, if the truth should be told, in the year 1917, as George Orwell was preparing to attend Eton School, two major world events were taking place. Europe was embroiled in a major conflict that later would be called the Great War, World War I, and Russia was on the brink of a revolution that would have an impact on the planet for the next 75 years. Both events stemmed from a long history of complex political entanglements, secret agreements, and economic considerations. The Great War began with the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914. In Russia, the decade leading to the revolution of 1917 began with a series of Russian defeats in the war with Japan. Military mutinies and workers' strikes culminated in a march on the Tsar's Winter Palace at Petersburg, when workers attempted to present a petition calling for factory reforms and civil and political rights. Tsarist troops opened fire. 96 workers were killed and over 300 were wounded. Another 34 died later. The seats were sold. In March 1917, the revolution began, and Russia, economically drained by the cost of the World War and demoralized by defeats in that war, rose against Tsar Nicholas II. In October, the Bolsheviks, so-called Bolsheviks, were the communists, staged a second revolution and seized power. Among their leaders was Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov Lenin, a committed revolutionary who was inspired by the teachings of Karl Marx. Marx, a German economist and the author of Das Kapital, The Capital, and co-author of the Communist Manifesto, called for a struggle of the proletariat, the workers, against the aristocracy. The ensuing years of political struggle and civil war brought about the rise to power of Leon Trotsky and Joseph Stalin, as well as the arrest and the murder of the Tsar and his entire family. The next 2 decades brought the death of Lenin in January 1924. A power struggle between Trotsky and Stalin ensued. It ended with Trotsky's deportation from the Soviet Union in 1939 and his assassination in Mexico City in 1940. Under the new communist regime, the people suffered through famine and civil war. Stalin's taking despotic control of the country after a series of public trials in the 1930s to purge the government of his political enemies furthered that suffering. So the reaction to the novel is important to bear in mind. When Animal Farm was completed in February 1944, it was offered to Victor Gollancz, a publisher of the Left Book Club, whose book choices were distributed to more than 40,000 readers in the Times. The offer was refused. However, it was a decision Gollancz later regretted as a professional publishing mistake, for the work became one of the few undoubted masterpieces of our time. It is viable as a work of fiction that one can read and appreciate with no historical background, and as a simple classic story of struggle against tyranny and the corruption of power. It also belongs to the genre of allegory. Orwell himself subtitles Animal Farm a fairy story. In developing his characters, barn animals and people on the Maynard farm in England, and the events of the story, the oppression of the animals, the ultimate subversion of the dream for change, and the victory of tyranny over idealism, Orwell renders a faithful view of Russian history and world politics from 1917 through 1943. His story symbolically depicts Russia under the rule of the Tsars, the Communist Revolution of 1917, the war of intervention where British, American and French forces attempted to intervene in the events and affect the outcome of the Russian Civil War, the new economic plan to modernize the Soviet Union and lead into the 20th century, Stalin's first 5-year plan, the power struggle within the Communist Party that brought about the expulsion of Trotsky and the dictatorship of Stalin, The Great Purge of 1937-1938, the Hitler-Stalin Pact of 1939, the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, World War II, and the subsequent uneasy friendship between Stalin and the Allied leaders during that war. Coincidentally, Animal Farm came into existence the same year that the atomic bomb hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki, according to a review by C.M. Woodhouse published in the Times Literary Supplement in London on the 6th of August 1954. It has had nearly as much impact. Therefore, the book Animal Farm, Fairy Story was promptly condemned by Joseph Stalin and banned in the Soviet Union. That's all for today, dear friends, followers and students, and friends of poetry and dystopia. I hope you enjoyed this reflective reading of this great novel, magnificent novel, satire and fairy story, Animal Farm, and I hope to see you in future reviews and posts on George Orwell and many other authors. Meanwhile, thank you very much for your time and attention. Kisses, hugs, cuddles, many squeezes and boogie woogie.